Hey guys, Greg here. It's the Vinyl Rundown, and this week I'm going to do a kind of an unusual video, which is 10 records I just brought home from the thrift shop. I'm going to go through them one at a time as I clean them. So it's going to be a SpinClean tutorial and a look at these records for the first time. That's kind of how I get to know new records that I buy. I wash them in the SpinClean, but it's also an opportunity to kind of look carefully at each one, examine the grooves, look at the label, look at the packaging, check out the quality, get them cleaned up for listening. So first thing I'm going to do is fill this thing up with water. So let me ask you, what do you wash your clothes in and what do you wash your dishes in? I bet you don't use ice cold water. Well, me neither. I'm going to get some warm water, throw it in here. You can take the distilled water, pour it in a Pyrex container, stick it in the microwave for a minute and a half, pour it in here. I'm going to go do that and we'll get started in just a second. Alright, heated up some water. Fill it up. That's not enough, so we're going to have to top it off with some room temperature water. That's okay. The two of them mixing together tends to create the right temperature. Alright, a little bit more distilled water. Bring it right up to the line. Maybe a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch over the line is okay. I also have some water in this little dish, which I will show you why I use that too. And we're going to start cleaning here in just a second. Okay, put in the brushes. I like to dip them in water on top because the top doesn't really get under the water. So the whole thing gets wet. Then you're supposed to use 1 capful of the SpinClean solution. Oops, that's too much. So, our measurements. The whole thing of putting them on top of the brushes I think is a little bit BS because everything gets mixed together in a few seconds anyway. Okay. This is my wet rag for wet wipe. What's wet wipe? You're going to find out what wet wipe is in just a second. First record here in this bunch, Ramsey Lewis Trio, great jazz piano player, Christmas record. I have a copy of this that's way more beat up, but for $1, here's a nice copy with a nice cover. And it's got the entire catalog of Cadet records, which is nice. There's a lot of good jazz on here. James Moody, Ahmad Jamal, who else? Kenny Burrell. A lot of good stuff on there. Alright, so we inspect the record before we clean it. Yeah, it's scratched up. Yeah, it's got some stuff on it. But to keep the water clean in the SpinClean, I like to give it a little pre-wipe with water. Yeah, what's the point of that? Well, there's a lot of dust on these records, and we're trying to keep the SpinClean water clean, so half the dust and grime comes off just by what I just did there. The SpinClean will get into the grooves, but you can also just wipe the surface dust off. You're supposed to go 3 turns each direction. Is that 3? I wasn't counting. So it's like 9 or 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And here's a trick I do. I let the record sit and let the water kind of drain off it for a couple seconds. Let it drain back into the basin there. And at this point you can dry at least the label, make sure that's not wet. Give it a couple seconds of drip time. Get your towel ready. Make sure you use a different part of the towel. So I'm pushing the record into the cotton towel. What the heck is that? What is that line there? I don't know what that is. Flip it over. Just a couple of wipes. I'm wiping with a microfiber towel that is way less lintier than cotton. So dragging is kind of what breaks off bits of fiber. So I'm not dragging with cotton, I'm blotting with cotton and dragging with microfiber. Just a couple swipes and stick it on the drying rack. Okay, this is Antonio Carlos Jobim, the great Brazilian songwriter. Wrote Girl from Ipanema, all that stuff. I don't know what this record is, but for $1, it seems to be in good shape. And quick inspection. Yeah, it's pretty filthy, it's pretty dusty. The pre-wipe, definitely a good idea on this record. You don't have to over-wipe. Some people will say if you're doing too much wiping and pressing, you're kind of damaging the record, which can be true, but I also want to keep the water clean. So let's see, this is Warner Brothers. You get a really good feel for the quality of vinyl when you're doing the spinning, because you can feel how thick and wobbly it is. This is way wobblier and thinner vinyl than the last video we did. I'm not counting very carefully. Are you guys counting at home? Has that been three spins yet? So when I pull it out, I don't want to pull it against the brushes. I want to slide it along with the groove. So I'm sliding it and rotating it at the same time and letting it sit and drain. And you can feel the warmth of that water. It's not hot, it's just kind of warm. Feels just right. Okay. Quick, now keep your wet towel separated from your dry towel. Blot by pushing just on the label. By doing that, 90% of the water has gotten absorbed by the towel on the bottom. And then it's a real easy couple of wipes. Good time to inspect it and see if you missed anything. Keep that center dead wax nice and clean. What's that? Anything weird that didn't come off, you might have to rewash or wipe harder. We're getting a lot of the water off, but it doesn't have to be perfectly dry. Alright, here's an interesting set of records on the Command label, which was kind of a cheesy, easy listening label in, I guess, the 50s. And there's 3 or 4 records on this label in here. Tony Mottola was a famous guitar player, but he was really more of a commercial studio kind of guitar player, not really a jazz artist per se. These are nice, thick quality vinyl, but needs a pre-wash like everybody else. You get a pre-wash because this is an ancient record, 1959, 1960, something like that. Just a couple of wipes to get most of the dust off. That will keep your water cleaner. So Tony Mottola, he made a whole series of these sort of easy listening, cheesy background music records. This one is Spanish guitar, but he's got, you know, French and Italian and cowboy themes and Christmas. I mean, every kind of theme record you can imagine. If you look carefully, you can see the water draining off. And once in a while, if you want to have fun, give it a start, you'll see it like separating, like the separation of the, was it the Red Sea or the Dead Sea? And you'll see this giant waves of water moving down the sides. The cleaner the record, in terms of not being scratched and higher quality vinyl, usually it'll drain really fast. Another one by Tony Mottola. So Tony, you may recognize that last name. Well, hold on. This one has the original Command Records inner sleeve, which has a lot of their other records on it. Hole on that side, no hole on that side. They innovated the one-hole sleeve. You got to give them credit for that. Everyone's got the 2-hole or the no-hole, but 1 hole. And this one is really dusty, so I'm glad I gave it the pre-wipe. I usually stand up when I do this to get better leverage, but I'm sitting down, so I'm in the frame and I can see what's going on here. Was that 9? I don't know. 1, 2, and let the water drip off the grooves, and make sure there's not too much water on the label. A couple seconds, and after it's drained in, you want to give it a little, you know what I'm talking about, guys. Get that drip off there. I like to fold the towel so you've got exactly 4 inches to match the width of the black part of the vinyl. Blot it, then flip it, then wipe it, flip it again. If I had more room, I would use a drier part of the towel, but I got it crammed in the shot here, so everything's a little cramped today. All right, I was talking about Tony Mottola. He's got a cousin named Tommy Mottola, who's the head of Casablanca Records and was married to Mariah Carey for a while. Mariah Carey. His brother's actually, or his cousin is more famous than him. Okay, here's an interesting record. Pablo Casals. There's nothing on the cover. You can't see anything. Pablo Casals, A Living Portrait. For $1, I picked this up. Pablo Casals, probably the greatest cello player of the early part of the 20th century. This record looks like it doesn't have any music on it. I didn't realize that till I got it home. Pablo Casals, A Living Portrait in His Own Words. Commentary by Isaac Stern, limited edition. And it's still sealed. You gotta tear this off. You gotta tear this perforated plasticky thing off. And because we're in a little bit of a hurry today, I don't think I'm gonna open this. I'm not sure if I'm gonna listen to it or sell it. I'm gonna check it out on YouTube before I open it up. Maybe it's worth something. Kind of doubt it, but we'll see. Okay. Jazz Christmas record. There aren't that many of these, so these are good to find for $1. Mistletoe Magic, Holiday Jazz Improvisations on the PAJ label, which is Herbert Wong. Herbert Wong was like a famous jazz historian and writer. I think he had his own radio show. And then up in San Francisco, he had his own jazz label. So, who's on here? There's a lot of good people on here, even though this is not a well-known record. Mel Waldron, Billy Higgins, the great Billy Higgins on drums, Joe Henderson, saxophone, Hank Jones. So, I haven't heard this, but we have a huge collection of Christmas records. So, a jazz one is always great to find. PAJ stands for Palo Alto Jazz, up in the Bay Area. This one is really pretty dirty, so he needs a pre-wash. Okay. Big chunks of like hair or something on here. There was no inner sleeve on that one, which is weird for a jazz record. Herb Wong just died a couple years ago. I think he was about 85, 86. Okay, the water's beating off this thing really nicely because the vinyl's nice and clean. So it's moving fast, which I like to see. And the drips. I would let it sit longer, like 30 seconds, if we weren't making a video, but watching a record dry it's actually more exciting than watching paint dry, but not by much. Okay, I see a nice scratch here. So that's one of the advantages of cleaning these records one at a time, is you really get an up-close look at what's going on with the vinyl. So there is a big scratch. I lost it, but it's in track 1, and I'm sure it's going to be audible. So we will hear that when we play them back. Okay, next record. This record was a little disappointing. Didn't love the music, but whenever you see Deutsche Grammophon for $1 with Von Karajan and the Berlin Philharmonic, usually want to pick it up because they're really clean vinyl, really good recordings. This had no inner sleeve, and it's pretty dirty. Usually classical record people take really good care of their records, unlike you rock and roll people. But so this piece of music is by Delibes. I guess that's how you pronounce it, and it's a ballet. He has another more famous piece of music, which I didn't realize which was which, so this isn't the record that I thought I was getting. But for $1, alright, whatever. Okay, back to that other label we did before, Command Records. Stereo Checkout. This is one of those test discs. I love finding these. I probably have 6 or 7 of these. Back in the old days of hi-fi, they would make records for you to check out, test out your stereo. So it's track 1, stereo balance check. Track 2, left and right channel check. Frequency runs, output balance, flutter and wow check, phasing, all these cool things if you're a turntable nerd where you can test out your system. Check out the cool high-tech graphs and charts and engineering nerd stuff. Okay. These microfiber things do not really stay wet. They don't absorb that well, so you got to keep dipping it if you're going to do this method. Literally, it's dry after a minute or two. If you have really nice, expensive records, you might not want to go through this step up first because it's just more wear and tear on your record. But these are dollar thrift store records, and I'm more worried about them being filthy and dusty than I am worried about them getting slightly damaged. They're already damaged goods when you buy them. Okay, a couple minutes of, couple seconds of drying. Did I miss anything on here? There's just more nerdy engineering stuff on here. Some sort of discussion about how to set up your turntable and phasing and frequency response and setting up your speakers. Good information to have. I mean, if you want to be a turntable expert, you should pay attention to some of this stuff. One technique I forgot to tell you about on the towel. The wet portion of the towel is going to get matted down, so fluff up those fibers once in a while. They'll dry better and they'll be more absorbent if they're standing straight up rather than if they're laying down. Incidentally, that's kind of the same reason why we changed the rotation, 3 this way, 3 that way. That's why we changed rotation on the SpinClean, is because the fibers on the little brush things, they'll get matted down in one direction. So by changing the direction of rotation, you move them up a little bit so they don't get stuck matted down in one direction. Last record, guys, another one on this command label, Provocative Percussion. These were known as being sort of, oh, the record's not in here. Anyway, I'm not going to go get it because this video's gone on too long, but I do want to say the cover, interesting cover designs they have. It's really plain, right? But actually, this was considered high art back in the 50s and 60s. This is by a famous artist called Joseph Albers, or Albers. He is really known for writing books and lectures on this whole thing of color theory, like how does our brain perceive different colors and how do colors look when they're next to each other, relative color, and yet this is completely black and white. It's just some cubes. I don't know if he painted it or drew it or what, but so that's pretty much my SpinClean technique, at least the cleaning portion. Now we have to let these dry on the rack. Can you even see the rack? It's out of frame. It's one of these office paper racks. You can get something similar to this at Staples for $6 or $7. If you still work in an office that has paper, our insurance office was throwing this away and I grabbed it out of the trash because cheapskate. Let these dry, then we have to put them back in the sleeves, and that's the opportunity for you to look at each cover, make sure it's not filthy, make sure it's not dusty. Maybe you have to wipe off the surface. Some of these glossy surfaces get really dirty, and you can wipe these down with a damp rag. And then you get into this whole thing of, do I need to get a new inner plastic sleeve? Can I use the paper sleeve? Usually we're not going to use the paper sleeves on old records, but some of these records are kind of cheesy. I'm not really going to listen to them a lot, and they might not be sleeve worthy. So guys, I think that is the end of another week's worth of spin cleaning cheap, cheesy thrift store records. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe, please leave some comments, and we will talk to you later.
This is probably the most challenging record you have ever put on your turntable. Its purpose is to challenge the performance potential of your stereo equipment by providing an amazing array of testing devices for high-level checkout, and at the same time to present peak musical performances designed for the connoisseur of sound reproduction. Side number 1 of this stereo checkout record contains technical data necessary to enable you to properly adjust and calibrate your stereo system.